Hello and welcome to the Capital Conversation with me, Michael Hayman. Now we've got a special for you today, 2 shows for the price of 1. A chance to look back at 2018 and then to look forward to a brand new year, 2019. Because we've captured the hopes, dreams and fears of some of the brilliant people that have sat right here and told me the tales of their success. From some of the biggest names in retail to the technologists that are changing our world, we've had a ringside seat for some knockout guests. First up, let's take a look at those that are dreaming big and building it right here in London. Monzo's Tom Blomfield to kick us off.
I think as long as you're aligned with your investors and staff members, colleagues and your customers, and you're all sort of on the same page about it, no. I think we're in a great place. So first of all, we're acquiring 100,000 customers a month for free practically. We can run a current account for about £10 a year, which is 95% lower than a high street bank. And we make revenues that are probably only £12 or £13 a year, which again is 90% lower, but our costs will stay the same as our revenues grow. And so sort of we've seen this model play out again and again, where you've got high street competitors like Blockbuster, and someone comes in with a model that's ultra low cost. It's only a matter of time before the high street incumbent dies out.
Yeah, I mean, you've made that point that you want to be that model. If Amazon is for retail, you're going to be for banking. Presumably, the investors are going to be with you for the long term on that. How do you keep them on side?
I think being really clear when you decide whose investment to take, what you're agreeing on. And so it was very, very sort of important for us. In the early days, we got Eileen Burbidge from Passion Capital, and we talked a lot about the vision and what we were trying to achieve, and she was absolutely on board. And as each round progresses and we bring new investors on board, it's about having that conversation with them and saying, look, we're not aiming for an IPO in a year or two. We're not driving towards immense profitability in the short term. We're in this game to acquire hundreds of millions of users and build a platform for the future. And
when you look at the London scene, I mean, even in a short period over those 3 years, I mean, there have been some amazing companies that have come onto the scene. I mean, how does it feel being a London growth entrepreneur? And in fact, you know, one of the posters, I guess, of London, of what's possible for a London growth story. Yes.
I think it's amazing to see what's happened to the London technology scene, probably over the last 10 years, actually. I tried raising money for my first business in 2007, and we failed completely. And now to see the number of companies getting beyond that startup phase to sort of scale up, really raising a lot of money. Even in our own industry, you've got N26 in Germany and Revolut and us all raising great amounts of money to go and attack this problem. I
read that it wasn't kind of investment or investor sort of woes that might keep you awake at night. It was actually the idea that you might not get there first, that actually a competitor might come there. Is that what keeps an ambitious entrepreneur on the up, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily looking at today's competitors. I think what I was talking about was that there might be a better solution that's out there. And maybe the person working on that is someone in his or her bedroom or garage that's sort of hacking away with a couple of friends, and they sort of stumble on this model that then gets to 30, 40, 50 million customers overnight.
So what's interesting is Westbourne Grove worked very well as a high residential store, and then our second was Torrington Place, which was very different. And then the next ones were different. And every time we opened, I thought, could we just do the same thing again so we know it's a home run? But we tried different formats, but happily they have all worked.
They've all worked. Now, you've always struck me as an ambitious person. You've been quoted as saying, I wanted it so badly I almost had stomachache. You know, that kind of the hunger for success. Have you still got the hunger? And have you still got stomachache?
I don't have a stomachache. I do have the hunger, but for different things now, because it's gone. Well-being is really my thing, and it was all about food. But it wasn't. It's funny you say ambition, which is very male. For me, it was desire. It was this passion to do something that I felt really strongly about.
Okay, with desire, that's fine. We can work with that. But is the desire still? I mean, when you look at what you've created, you look at where it is today. You've got the digital offer, all of those sorts of things. Is it a sense of mission accomplished with Planet Organic now?
It is in that Planet is successful, and that's great, and it's growing, and that's great. But that mission for me, the mission of promoting health in the community, that is still my mission every day. It's what gets me up, keeps me researching, reading, talking, lecturing, teaching, all the time.
And you're at the vanguard, at this sort of front line of purposeful businesses that want to do good things with the planet. I mean, can you make money with those sorts of businesses? Are they the future of business?
And I think entrepreneurs these days, and particularly women, are often leading from the heart, from passion, from purpose. And I think if you're going to have a business and be fulfilled doing work that you love for the rest of your life, which was the selfish reason why I set up Planet Organic, that's where you are in business.
I think it's certainly one of our greatest achievements, the distillery in Balham. It's very much an open space where people can come. We do tours 5 days a week. We're looking to extend to daily tours next year. And it's a very welcoming place. We've based it on the old gin houses of the 1800s. So it's very much like a home. In fact, a lot of people say they want to move in there.
Oh, right.
Might some waifs and strays.
Everything you need.
Absolutely,
yeah.
But I think very much it's a place that where we can really be open and honest about how we make our gin and really give people an experience that hopefully they won't forget.
A lot of people, James, when they think about London and, you know, businesses that manufacture or make things, is that London is an expensive place from a real estate perspective. So why here? Why back to London?
Well, our family started off in London, so it was always important to end up back in London. We moved out for a short period of time while we found the right building. I think one of the challenges of finding a distillery is that, one, it's got to be practical, so you can put your gin stills in there and move raw materials in and out. And then, as Miranda said, we wanted somewhere where people can come and see how we make our gin and really experience it for themselves.
Was the brand of London important? Because I always remember, you know, growing up that London gin was a thing, actually. I mean, you used to talk about that. I mean, is that part of the thinking that you want to reconnect?
Absolutely. I mean, London dry gin is a style of gin, but it can be made anywhere in the world, which is a shame that, you know, the regulations changed many years ago. So London dry gin can be made anywhere. From our point of view, London is the home of gin. It's where it was founded, and it's very much something we want to continue. And it's part of our ethos, of our story, is that, you know, we make True English gin, and True English gin was founded in London.
So you need a part two to your campaign, right? You need to sort of keep, like champagne, right? Like, do you want London to be a mark?
There have been some discussions about actually trying to do more with that, but it's, as always things in life, they take a long time and can be quite complicated in passing them through, but you never know, something might happen.
Driving all of these brilliant businesses are brilliant stories, and that means harnessing the power of the brand. Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones is the Black Farmer, and I'll tell you what, he knows a thing or two about getting that right.
When I first started off the brand, my goal was to try and bring something different, to actually go against the stereotype, to really try and cut the status quo. And at the time, I sort of recognised there wasn't a lot of, well, there wasn't any black farmers around at all. So I decided, A, I was going to get a farm, and B, I was going to launch a brand. And I wanted it to be a quintessentially British brand, and I wanted to sort of demonstrate that Britishness is not this traditional, old-fashioned sort of, you know, ladies in Edwardian dresses and things like that.
There's a more contemporary edge.
More contemporary. And so what's really interesting is that I can remember doing some research at the time to say, should I call this brand the Black Farmer? And all the research came back and said no, because it might offend people. And it taught me a big lesson. And the lesson is this: research will tell you what people are thinking today, but it won't tell you what people are thinking tomorrow.
Right.
So that's where you need vision.
So it's a bad message for the pollsters. But there was something about edge, right? I mean, you were inspired by Virgin, another brand that people didn't like saying at the time.
Well, yes. I mean, I think if you look at those brands, any great brand started off by breaking the rules. That is the first thing you have to come to terms with. If you want to do something different, you're going to break the rules. And I like to say to people, work out, what are you? Are you a beer or a belonger? And so it's beers who bring change regardless of the consequences it may have to other people who want to belong. If you want to belong, you cannot be entrepreneurial. You can't really go out and do things differently.
But I mean, that philosophy, I mean, that got you getting your customers to lobby the supermarkets to get you in. I mean, you did some quite sort of controversial things, I guess, to get the brand up and airborne.
Exactly. And so you can't do that if you're trying to please people. And I think that all these big institutions, they're standing up there high and mighty, knowing that everybody wants to get their attention and everybody sort of kowtows them. And I says, well, don't. Go along and be yourself and do something different.
Initially, it was hard going because we were trying to introduce some premium values into a product that had been pretty much commoditized. You know, there was a lot of relatively low-priced, low-quality pasta sauce on the market, which I wasn't interested in. So, you know, because I hadn't done any research or anything, I just assumed that people would want a more premium product, and then I had to figure out how to sell the stuff.
You've created a brand, you've used your own name to do so.
Yeah.
What does that brand stand for, do you think?
Well, it stands for the things that I believe are important in terms of food, which is it's got to taste good.
Yeah.
It's got to taste good. You've got to use the best possible ingredients. You've got to make it as simple as possible. I really like simplicity in everything, but especially in food. You know, I don't like to spend a lot of time interpreting a label and reading ingredients and thinking, what the heck is that? So just keeping it very, very simple.
So that simplicity has endured.
Yeah.
There you have it. 2018 wrapped up by some of our most inspiring business leaders. When we come back, we ask a simple question: what's next? And that will take us from industries of the future to the B word itself. Yes, just when you thought it was safe to put the kettle on, Brexit's coming back. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to the Capital Conversation with me, Michael Hayman. Now, you're watching a special episode today, and it's time to take a look forward at the hopes and dreams of my guests in 2019. Brexit is one of the big ones, and my guests have had no shortage of strong opinions and future predictions. The campaigner June Sarpong left us in no doubt about where she stands.
When I looked at all of the various outcomes, there was nothing that showed that leaving the EU would be better for Britain. On any level, none of it. And if you look at the real concerns, the problems that people have with the EU, and a lot of those concerns are valid, those are concerns that we could continue to campaign on and put pressure on the EU over a period of time. So if you look at the costs in terms of the financial costs, if you look at what it's going to mean for Britain in terms of our standing in the world, and if you look at the options that have now been taken off the table for our young people, there is no way this thing was worth it.
Do you think business could have spoken out more strongly about Brexit?
I have to say, I thought British business in general was terrible over Brexit. There were so many of them that were far too scared to actually in any way put their head above the parapet because they thought that it might offend some shareholders or whatever, and also because they thought it was a done deal. The problem was everybody thought this thing was fine and, you know, Remain would win and then whatever. But actually now they're feeling it themselves.
What should they be doing now, do you think?
Well, I think the most important thing that needs to happen is for everybody to understand what really will happen if we leave. At the moment, a lot of businesses are not being honest. They're saying, oh yeah, of course we're going to stay, when we know they're not. We know that many of them are secretly already looking at office space in Europe and so on. Be honest so that British people really understand what this could actually mean for them.
You describe Brexit as a future that's brighter than we realise.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, the British economy, what drives me mad is this idea the British economy is going to slide into the North Sea and sink. This is insane. It's the 5th biggest economy in the world. It's hugely innovative. It leads in so many areas. It's very strong in manufacturing. It's leading in artificial intelligence. In biotech, it's a global center. So again, I come back to what are the investors saying? They're saying, I'm going to keep putting as much or more capital in the UK as ever before.
But there are not many big voices in business that would echo that sentiment.
I find it interesting. And why? Because they'd rather hang on to rules that are old and they understand than take the opportunity to build a new framework that would be better. Here's the bottom line. The whole world trusts the British to create a rule system that works. I mean, it's you guys who created the Magna Carta. It's only the British who lack confidence in their own future.
Working in that building, you know, being given the privilege of walking up Downing Street and knocking on that door and getting in, it's an extraordinary privilege. And I think most people who work there go to work with, you know, a determination to give it their absolutely all and best.
And so does that lead to a certain type of energy in a place like Number 10 in terms of the sort of the people you get there, the sense of mission, the sense of drive?
So every administration has its own sociology, and I was part of one administration, and well, two if you count the coalition and the Tory-led government, and so I couldn't really speak to what's going on now, what went on before. But I think most people who rise to the top of the British government, you know, are incredibly motivated, hardworking, you know, hard-charging at times people.
But I mean, you got up close to David Cameron. I mean, the history books are being written right now about him. How would you rate him? How's he going to go down in history as a PM?
Well, look, I think that whatever else he did, he will be judged by two things. He would be judged by the early work he did in the coalition, by bringing the country together, by rescuing it from the economic abyss and telling a different story of what the UK could be in the future. And I think that's going to be the first pillar of his sort of legacy. And the second is going to be the referendum.
Well, can you believe it? That was Brexit. Now let's move on and get the take on tech as we turn to the people who are in the future business. Do you get a sense that we don't quite see the technological entrepreneur in the way that we did a few years ago?
I think so, but I think that's a good thing. I don't believe in gods, and I think it's unhealthy. So I think of it from a number of angles. Firstly, you know, the internet has been around for about 30 years, maybe a bit longer. The commercial internet has been around for about that time. And it's like we're having a bit of a shakeout. You know, I think because maybe I'm 45, it feels a bit like a midlife crisis. We're thinking, oh my God, some of the things we did not intend to be consequences are consequences. And we as people are looking at what's happening with children's relationship to some of this stuff, what's happening with the vulnerable, or what's happening with exclusion, diversity, and all these things. I can't code, I'm an ancient historian, but we need to involve more people in the workforce. That's got to come from a wider pool, especially women. But it's also about creating good products. Right. You know, I feel very anxious about sex bots, about voice boxes sitting in the corner that you shout a woman's name at. Alexa, do this, which talks back to you in a female voice. No, please and thank you.
So Alexa is actually
I think
part
this
of the
is,
problem.
well, I think we should be thinking about this, and I don't think if you have a broader set of people designing the products, you will have this set of much more kind of culturally limited
So our viewers
idea.
need to be kinder to Alexa. I think that's
well,
the...
please say please and thank you to
I'm sure they have.
Alexa.
Now, tell us about DOTEVERYONE.
DOTEVERYONE is an organisation I started after I gave the Dimbleby lecture on BBC 3 years ago. It felt as though the technology, as you've already said, the shine was coming off it, and we've got to keep fighting for the everyone part of all of this to make sure that technology works for everyone. It's not just for the few.
The fact is that cybercrime is probably, and anyone who suggested that crime doesn't pay clearly hasn't looked at the average cybercriminal. There is a lot of cybercrime, and it's an exponential increase, both in terms of the cost to organisations, but in terms of the amount of money that cybercriminals are harvesting, are making. And of course, this is a global problem. You're absolutely right. We face it as a huge challenge here at the capital in the UK, but actually it's a problem across the country and across the globe.
And where are the hotspots? I mean, where are the criminals? I mean, are they everywhere, or are they in certain countries? Or...
Yeah, well, the reality is they are probably everywhere, but there are certain areas where there are probably more than others, and those areas are areas where they are able to operate with relative impunity. I say relative because every government is trying to tackle this. The reality is not all governments are as well equipped as others. Here in the UK, we're quite fortunate. Our government has determined to make the UK the safest place to do business online and to live. It's quite a big...
If it can stop itself being hacked.
If it can stop itself being hacked, well, you might as well start with yourself. And actually, we're investing quite heavily in the UK as a nation into this space. £1.9 billion spent over the last, or to be spent over a 5-year period.
So a lot of the sort of people that watch a show like the Capital Conversation will be entrepreneurs, they'll be smaller businesses. What are a couple of things that they could do to make themselves safer against the backdrop of the environment that you've described?
Well, actually, the first thing is to understand where our information actually is. So as an organisation, it's really important that we understand what we hold and what we hold dear, and therefore maybe where it might be vulnerable. That's something that every organisation can do first and foremost. Absolutely ensure that your people who will have access to your networks and data and systems, they know what to do with it, how to look after it, not just internally within the organisation, but personally. And also there are other things that we can do. So the National Cybersecurity Centre has an amazing website with lots of great advice. Go to it, have a look at it, follow their 10 steps.
You can give us the URL if it's a government site.
I'll probably get it wrong, actually. But it's NCSE. If you simply typed in NCSE, they would absolutely find it.
And that's giving you tips about how to keep yourself safe.
Tips on how to stay safe. It's accrediting and pointing out providers for certain services so they know where to go. Businesses quite often don't do the right thing because they're not sure. It's quite a noisy space. Actually, there's a lot of help out there.
A lot of help out there. And if you were to give a top tip, the thing that you've learned along the way, the thing you could do right now, we're going to go into the break in a second. So what's the top tip that you'd give our viewers tonight in terms of making yourself secure online?
I would absolutely consider the human aspect of what they're doing and consider the way in which they engage with technology and actually their people, the members of their teams, and how they engage. They should make sure that those people know exactly how to look after themselves and their organisation's data.
What do people think about when they're thinking about buying from us, investing in us?
That we are the 5th largest trading nation on earth, and 11% of all data flows come through London. When they look at the UK, this is a trusted place to do business, and we've got a great reputation. So I think people are looking in towards us, and we are definitely looking outwards.
When sort of people think about, though, the UK tech offer specifically, when they think Britain is great in, fill in the dots, what are the things where we internationally excel in?
First on my list, talent, all day long. We have great education establishments, including universities, research bodies. We export a huge amount of brain talent.
So brain power?
Brain power, absolutely. AI and robotics, for sure. The whole innovation spirit. We are a nation of pioneers. So that's really important.
And that pioneering spirit, are we seen as good at starting but not necessarily scaling? I mean, is that part of, I mean, people will often talk to people like Sir Tim Berners-Lee, invents the World Wide Web, but doesn't become a billionaire in the process like many of the Californian equivalents.
You're right, we could do better. There are some stats, I'll give you an example. 3rd on the list of OECD list for startups, 13th for scale-ups. So there is a way to go, but there is a lot of work and a lot of investment going into that.
What happens between 3rd and 13th? I mean, what sort of explains the drop from being, I guess, in the top league to being middle table?
A large part of that simply is that people go abroad for bigger markets and they get bored. So that's a very, very large part. It starts here, it's innovated here, and then we go forward to larger markets.
Right. That's it. Time's up. Predictions done. And what a pleasure to share the views on the what has been and the what might be still yet to come. The highs, the lows, the hopes, the fears. They're all part of the extraordinary story of making it in business right here in London. And there's more to come in 2019. A year that's set to change, well, pretty much everything. So I'll see you on the next Capital Conversation. Until then.